I'd never been as lonely as I was in my new guild.
Oh my god, it's Razzun!
But what had I done to make them hate me this way?
Yo, come do some keys, man.
Maybe I wiped the raid one too many times.
Damn it.
Maybe my jokes just weren't funny.
It's a lot like jacking off because you're bored.
But one thing's for certain. I was failing this trial. But what could I do? What could any of us do? So I stole 800 feasts from the guild bank and I blocked them on Discord. What up, gamers? I'm Aaron. So you've joined a new guild. Good for you, but now you've got a trial roll, and the pressure is building up fast. This isn't Wrath of the Lich King anymore. Back then, your grandpa could secure a raid spot with nothing more than a firm handshake. But nowadays, there's all kinds of expectations. Things like do mechanics and show up to raid on time. So you're probably feeling a bit nervous. Well, let me put you at ease. There's probably a lot less pressure than you think. It's important to remember, every single guild you've ever seen, even the best ones, are in a constant state of dying. And that's just because life happens. That old guy who's been raiding with them since Black Temple, he's gotta go be a father to his kids. A new college semester is starting and the warlock can barely make the times. And the druid? Well, she's gonna have to retire once her husband finds out she's banging the raid leader. And the warlock, and you guessed it, the old guy too. These things happen all the time, and the only way to fight them is by constantly recruiting more people. So you can kind of cut yourself a bit of slack, because it's safe to assume the guild wants your trial to work out. And I don't want to get your hopes up too high, but some of them are so desperate that the only way you're failing is if you actively make things worse for them. But it's important to be realistic. There's a lot more eyes on your mistakes than someone who's a known quantity. So how do we play this cool and make sure our new guild loves us? Well, firstly, you need to understand that the guild you're joining probably knows you a lot better than you think. You probably had to either fill out an application or do an interview to get in. If you didn't, then someone on the inside gave you the vouch of the century, or this guild is fucking lost, and they've got no idea if you're good or bad. In that case, just do as much damage as you can, and they'll worship you. But assuming they were good enough to do any verification whatsoever, then somebody probably looked you up. You're not just some mystery character nobody's ever seen. They probably know what to expect from you. If you've got less prog than this new guild, they already know that, and if your parses are shit, then they're not expecting you to blast the damage meter off the screen. No good guild is just giving random noobs trials, hoping for diamonds in the rough. If they gave you a trial, then they assume that you're either good enough to play there, or good enough to sit in the spot until someone better comes along. If they didn't, then they'd just be wasting their own time. And I am not saying don't care about damage. You will never hear that from me. But I am saying it's really unlikely that this guild is going to say, wow, this trial is super mid, if you don't immediately just knock their socks off. Especially because nobody plays good on their trial. In my first Hall of Fame trial, I was so nervous, and my hands were shaking so hard that I wiped the raid on Volcaros. That's right, the worm boss from Amirdrasil. That's the rating equivalent of getting fucking pantsed in front of everyone. But when you're new, unless this happens every single time they put you in, it's pretty unlikely they're gonna hold it against you too hard. But there is an exception to that, and that's that they want to know you're making a mistake and not just baseline incompetent. Which brings me to the first major tip of the video. Imagine you get a little silly and you wipe the raid. Now, in an ideal world, any raid wiper can drop a quick, "my bad guys," just so that everybody knows they're good to move on from it. But here's the thing, and this is where a lot of people struggle. You have to actually learn from that mistake. I played with this guy in Dragonflight who wiped the raid 1 in 3 pulls for the entire expansion. And every single time he'd say, "my bad guys." But if it's always your bad, people are still gonna get pissed off even if you acknowledge it. So the lesson here is that when you fuck up, you need to learn from it fast, so that your next fuck up is in a new and unique location. There is no better way to make 19 people hate you than to make every single one of them wait for you to learn one mechanic. But let's get down and dirty, okay? Realistically, 95% of all trial fails come down to one of 3 things. The first one is just baseline inability to play at the level required. Again, this is super rare. They gave you a trial, so unless you're a massive fraud, you collapse under the pressure, or they are terrible judges of character, you can probably do it. This is the main reason why this video is longer than 15 seconds, and I don't just say, play good. Now the second thing is that people assume the expectation for their trial is to just be the best player of all time. They do too much. They don't listen, and they play selfishly to look good. But you've got to remember, you can't be the best WoW player of all time. Because I am. But if you're up on your raid prep, and you kick ass at all the things they ask of you, then you might be able to look like number 2. And the third reason, I think it can safely be boiled down to just inability to ask for help. Remember, your officers want your trial to succeed, and if you ask them, they already see themselves as the babysitters of 20 adult children. So you asking them to clarify their expectations for your trial or what you should do on a fight is nothing. You need to use your guild officers the way your uncle uses ChatGPT. You just put any dumbass question you can think of right in the chat box, and occasionally it will spit out something useful. And in return, you will ideally be useful to them, which is major tip number 2. And that's that when you see an officer or a raid leader expressing frustration that something is not getting done or getting done poorly, you can earn a ton of bonus points by being the one to step up and make it happen. I'll give you an example. My raid leader was very unhappy with our Phase 1 ad damage during the last Demencius sale. Now I'm an arcane mage, so my damage to those ads barely matters. And if I was a tenured professor of my new guild, I'd just tell my chud teammates to hit those ads harder while I cream pie the boss. But you can't have that perspective on a trial. On a trial, your sole purpose in life is to get as many good boy points as humanly possible. And that means that you're gonna obliterate those ads, even if it kills you. That way, when your raid leader looks at ad damage and sees you way up there, he's gonna say, wow, my new trial cares so much. And at that point, you're already in. But anyway, it's worth considering that as a trial, you're basically just a raider on a probationary period. It's the time in which they can kick you without having to feel bad about it. Realistically, almost any guild has 2 or 3 people that are noticeably worse than everyone around them. But they've been there for so long that no officer wants to be the asshole who has to take them out behind the shed. If they were a trial, they'd be kicked. But instead, they're just waiting for someone like you to come and replace them. And on one hand, this is a good thing, because you've got some easy spots to steal. But on the other hand, this is a bad thing, because you could become one of them and just be a soulless husk of a raider. This is why you've always got to watch out for a silent benching, which is basically like a guild shadow ban. Remember, in a progression guild, everybody gets time to sit. There are 9,000 reasons why you might not be in on a fight, and only like 8,000 of them are that you suck. But if you pass your trial, or you've been around for a while and you notice that they never put you in for anything important, even when your class is really good at it, well, then that might be a sign that this guild doesn't value your skill as a player too much. In that case, it might be time to start up a new trial somewhere else. But something like this is never going to happen to you, because remember, you look like the second best player in the world, so we're just going to go on to tip number 3. A good hack to getting in good graces with your new guild is to be present often. You don't want to just be silently gliding in and out of raid. If people are doing activities in public spaces, be open to the idea of including yourself. I'm not saying you have to be anybody's best friend, but you want people to know who you are. I've had awkward moments where I assume someone is a new trial, only to find out they've been playing with us for months. And this is the worst thing that can possibly happen to you, because it means you made no impression with either your gameplay or your personality, and both of those are really important things to be able to lean on. Let's say you have a bad raid night. People will have so much more patience for you if they consider you a human, and even more if they like you. Or maybe you're an annoying piece of shit. Well, every guild's got one that's too good to kick. If the vibes are right and you can pull it off, it can help to goof off during raid, but make sure you're not just like throwing jokes at 20 people who have no idea who you are. And at the end of the day, don't forget, this trial is for you too. If you assumed your new guild was pretty good, but it turns out they might suck, don't be afraid to hit them with the old, it's not you, it's me. You don't really owe these guys anything. Remember, there's thousands of guilds out there, and tons of them are just begging you to put in an application. So if you're chilling in a low-ranked guild, and you've ever thought, maybe I could do more. Maybe I don't belong in a guild that wipes to algeth'ar 150 times. Well, you're probably right. And if you're on top of everything, most trials should be a pretty chill experience. It's just doing the same raid with a new group of people. You'll notice that good WoW players can swap between groups a lot easier, and that's because once you understand the encounter, you only really have to adjust the little things to play with somebody else. The only issues arise when you assume that you can hop into a new group and instantly be the best player. It takes a bit of time to acclimate to any new guild. Maybe you've got the best damage dealers of all time, and you've got to get used to ads that die in 0 seconds. Or maybe everybody is super ethical, and you need to learn to play like a parse feed. Or even worse, you have to play a boss that you didn't get to progress. This is the worst thing ever. Your cooldown timings are different every single pull. Nothing makes sense, and it feels like you're playing with res sickness. But the flip side of this is that your best performances will come once you get to progress with your new guild, and you can build a really nice foundation of playing together. Until then, all you've got to worry about is doing the jobs that they specifically ask of you, whether it's soak here, place the warlock gateway here, or don't die in the first 15 seconds. Those are the things that they're going to remember. And like I said, if you're on top of all of that, then the trial should be relatively chill. They gave you one, so they think you can probably do it. But if you've listened to all of this and you're thinking, Aaron, this information was useless and I'm gonna crash out of my new guild, well then I still have good news for you. And that's that I read all of my YouTube comments, so once you've finished telling me that this is the worst video you watched all Razzuncember, then feel free to leave any questions about trials at any level, whether it's the worst LFR guild in the world or the Hall of Fame. Until then, I'm Aaron, and thanks for your time. Peace. Cream Pie the Boss.